Hi everyone. I want to have a brief conversation about discussing the voice. Now, I was on a couple of occasions, and particularly yesterday, I met with a friend of mine, and it became evident that talking to him about the voice was probably not all that wise. And what I discovered is that when we start, when we not start, but when we try to mention or just mention, I guess, that we're going to vote yes for the voice, that we're often inviting a conversation about the voice and what that means to us and to the person with whom we're having the conversation. And yesterday, and not just yesterday, but on other occasions, I've done that with people that I know, and it just gets lost. There is this sense that they don't want to have that conversation with you because they sit on the other side of the fence and they recognise that it might be damaging to the relationship you have with them by having a conversation about where they stand in relation to the voice. And I find it so uncomfortable. I'd like to be able to have a conversation whereby I can put forward my ideas, they can put forward theirs. I had a conversation with some guys actually not long ago that I played golf with, and it was evident from one of them in particular that they had a completely different view than myself, and their view was completely, in my view, misinformed. So how do I have a conversation with them or with that particular person and say, well, basically you're wrong? And I found it really difficult to do that. I put forward my arguments. He didn't agree with me. That's fine. I didn't agree with him. It didn't harm the relationship at all, I think. But I just find it difficult to have that conversation. And then I was wondering, well, what is this like for Indigenous people? What are they experiencing around this? And I came upon this article in on the ABC website or news site, and it was coalition members refused to meet with Indigenous mental health experts, calling for respectful voice referendum. Now, when I was going through this article, one of the things I noticed was that, firstly, they highlight the fact that the coalition didn't want to speak to them. So, Senator Price didn't want to speak to them, and other members of the coalition didn't want to speak to this group of people, this committee. So, what does all of this mean? And then I got down to the bottom of this, and down here it says, mentally, it is very difficult to feel safe, to have an opinion, or to have a respectful debate in our own communities or in our own workplaces. And what I started to consider was that it's difficult for me to have that conversation with Indigenous people. Sorry, I'll reframe that. It's impossible for me to have that conversation with my friends. So what is it like, therefore, for Indigenous people to have that conversation? And it is really difficult. And then I started to think, well, how does this affect their mental well-being? And it says here just before this, it says, it's becoming something that we cannot escape in every situation that we find ourselves in. So this bit here. And that over time is quite grueling. And I guess what I'm saying from my experience, I can understand that too, that it's tiring to wonder about how you're going to present your views, how you're going to open up that conversation, what's the conversation going to look like, will it impact or affect in any way our own perspective and our own relationship, I guess. So it also says here, we believe that the targeting politicians and encourage them to undertake the referendum debate in a more respectful way that will filter down to the general public. This is their aim. What the pledge is basically asking for is for people to be more mindful, more respectful, more inclusive, and overall just more aware of the social emotional well-being impact that the words that people say can have on the social emotional well-being of our Indigenous people as we move towards the referendum. So they're asking people to be more respectful. So they wanted to put this argument to those on the no side, particularly the opposition, the parliamentary opposition, and they wanted to convince them, I guess, that we need to have a more respectful discussion, because the impact that this is having on Indigenous people is intense, and that we must be mindful of the impact that this is having on them. It's reflecting, it's about them. It's the Indigenous people offering, in the most generous way, a opportunity for us non-Indigenous people to come along with them and have conversations about what is important for Indigenous people. It is that simple. It's not that complicated, but it has been made so political that it impacts Indigenous people emotionally. Just the discussion around all of this, because so much of it is, it's all about them, but it's about the negativity that is expressed by the No campaign in particular. And I think we need to be really mindful of how this conversation impacts First Nations people, and that we need to move the conversation to a point whereby we're no longer feeling embarrassed, like I am with my friends. I'm no longer feeling embarrassed about having that conversation, that we should be able to have a conversation that is open, that is honest, and that explores all the ideas from both sides. Now, in the next 40 days, that's my goal, is to be able to find ways to have conversations with my friends about why I want to vote yes, why I want to support this wonderful idea that we've been invited to consider by Indigenous people, and I want to be able to have that conversation in a respectful way. To disagree, but to disagree politely. So let me know what you think about all of that, and if you can, please subscribe to my channel. That'd be great, so I can keep you notified. And if you have any questions or things you'd like to discuss with me, feel free to email me on this email address so that we can have those discussions. And if you want to talk about any of your issues and video your thoughts about anything, I'd be more than happy to do that with you as well, as that's part of my thing at the moment. So thanks for being with me, everybody. Take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.